Two families from Tuvalu who sought to be New Zealand's first climate change refugees have had their cases rejected. The Immigration and Protection Tribunal ruled they did not risk being persecuted under the Refugee Convention. Our immigration reporter Jill Bonnet has been looking at the cases and told me why the families applied for asylum.
Both families argued that they wouldn't have access to clean and sanitary drinking water and that they were worried about the impact of climate change on their lives and their livelihoods. The couple in one of the cases came to New Zealand to look after elderly relatives, and they would have been returning there with two very young children, and so they were concerned about health standards and the impacts of their climate change and unemployment. They lived on Funafuti Atoll, which is 2.5 square kilometres. It is exposed to the sea, it has rising sea levels, land erosion is a serious problem. They believed that life in Tuvalu would no longer be sustainable. Both families pointed to rising sea levels, poor access to clean water and the country's high unemployment, which is at about 40%.
So why were their cases rejected?
Well, to qualify for refugee status, an asylum seeker, their predicament must be grounded in one of the 5 Refugee Convention grounds, and they are race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group or political opinion. Now, in this case, the tribunal decided that returning to Tuvalu would pose challenges for them socioeconomically and also the impact of climate change, but it couldn't find a basis for arguing that any harm that they would face as a result of the adverse impacts of climate change had any link at all to any of those 5 convention grounds.
And how common are these cases?
There have been about more than a dozen cases in the last 6 years or so in New Zealand. Climate change was used successfully in one immigration case in 2014. But that was slightly different. That was as a humanitarian appeal against deportation. And in that case, a couple were granted residence. In that case, other factors were also high in the tribunal's mind. This particular couple had very strong family networks and connections in New Zealand. It was probably the case of Ioane Teisiota from Kiribati that really brought or renewed attention to whether climate change could in fact lead to people abandoning low-lying Pacific islands. You may remember that he sought to be the world's first climate change refugee. He was citing king tides and storm surges that were damaging the coastline, eroding the coastline and ruining crops. But as in these 2 current cases, the upshot of that case was that the consequences of climate change are not grounds for gaining refugee status.
And that's our immigration reporter Jill Bonnet.